we can create a new folder, or we can go to a different folder and have some subfolders. Just one folder for this course. Right? I'm going to create a new folder. I'll just call it underscore 364 underscore notebooks. You can put any name you want. You don't have to specifically use this name. I'm going to create that folder. Now, next task would be find it. Oh, there we go. So I double click on this. So at this point, I'll go inside the folder. It's empty. At this point, you should have a folder on your Google Drive and just be inside that folder. All right. So far, so good. If someone has any problems, let me know so I can pause and you figure it out. We'll figure it out. All right. So I'm in Google Drive in this folder. Create. I'm gonna right click on this folder wherever you want to do it. Bunch of tools there, apps there by default. Some of them maybe are installed. You go to connect with more apps. Right. So right click, go to more, go to connect more apps. Right. This window should pop up, hopefully. And then I will search for collaboratory, or you can just put Colab. Right. This collaboratory comes up, this app. So I'll just put again, just to make sure everyone follows. Right click, go to more, connect more apps, and just type Colab. Right, collaboratory should come up. Click on that, and you'll get Google Colab here. Right, we'll just call it collaboratory. Now on this, click on it and click install. All right, you need your permission, so you can just give your permission. You have to log in, so I'm gonna click the account as giving this permission, and then that's it, done. All right, you can just keep this as is, make Google Colab the default app for files. You can open. Click OK and click done. All right, so now you should see uninstall because this app is already installed. All right, so far everyone is following. You can find it and you can install it. If there's any problem, please let me know. All right. All right, so I close this. Now, if you right click now, you should see a new app here that says Google Collaboratory. If you don't see it here, one way of enforcing it is to just reload this page, like refresh this tab. Just refresh it, reload it, whatever you want to call it. And then you right click, go to more, and you should have Google Colab as an option. All right. So I went to Google Drive, we made the folder, we installed Google Colab app, which is basically the environment we can write codes, Python codes online on Drive, so we can have access to it wherever we go. Now, what I do is that I'm going to create a file, like Google Colab file. Right click and click on that, it says Google Colab. Well, it doesn't have a name, but it should show up in your folder now as untitled. I'm waiting for this tab to go away. There you go. So I click back on this tab. Now you have it as a tab in your browser. Right? Any browser will do. I guess mine is Google Chrome, but you can use anything. You can just change it. I don't know. Initial try, initial test. Right? This is how you change the name of the file. And pay attention to the extension, right? IPYNB, IPython notebook. We'll talk about a little bit about what IPython is and what we're talking about here. But that's just the file. Change the name, press enter. There you go. If I go back, now the name, well, not updated yet. Maybe I can reload it. Of course, it doesn't work very fast too, but it's going to eventually update the name here. Just name the initial text. All right, so this is the environment we're going to do our coding. Right? You don't need to install anything. You don't need to have your computer with you wherever you go. Any computer you use, just open your Google Drive and open your notebook environment, which this is, and then we can start coding. Now, some general guidelines about this environment, so we don't get lost. Couple of options up there, typical options. Some of them you see in any program, right? We can create a new notebook. This is a notebook environment. You can create a new notebook. You can open a different notebook. You can upload a notebook from your computer. I'll briefly mention about different IDEs that you can use on your own computer if you want to download things and do the coding on your computer. You can rename it. Obviously, if I press rename, it goes back to what I just did, and you can change the name to whatever you want. Enter. You can move it to a different folder. Typical things you can do with a file in Google Drive, right? And eventually you can download it either as IPython notebook or just as a Python code. I'm going to briefly mention the difference, but what happens is that in our course, this is the main communicating tool or communication tool, I would say. Right? This is where we write the code. This is where we put the text. This is where I provide contents for the course, and you have it. Right? It's like we don't use the slides that much. Right? This is going to be, everything is going to happen in a notebook environment, or 80% of the time we are in this environment. And we use it for even projects. That's where you create your project. That's where you, that's what you submit for your project, for your homework assignments. Homework assignments are going to be in this environment. You open it, you write the code, get the results, and then submit this as your submission for your homework assignment. So this is pretty much covers everything. And once, when you do a homework assignment, you can just download this IPython notebook and submit. So, and obviously you can also print this file. Under edit, I'll talk about cells a little bit and the setting. Maybe we can just talk about notebook setting here. I can just go to setting. You can either go to setting using notebook setting, or you can just go here, click on this gear next to your Google account icon. Let's look at notebook setting first. So on notebook setting, there's just pretty much two options, right? I briefly mentioned and talked to you about GPUs, and I said GPUs basically were developed because of gaming industry, right? And then people realized that, oh, these are great for developing machine learning models, especially in large neural networks. TPUs, it's even more advanced. This is tensor processing unit, right? GPU is graphic processing unit. Don't quote me on that. I have to double check. But TPU is tensor processing unit, which is basically specifically developed for machine learning after GPUs came into play later on. You can just keep it as a none. We are not going to run. Oops, you can also see the information right here. We are not going to run large models, and GPUs also in Google Colab are not. You can't use too much GPU for free. This is just, we'll talk about this, you'll see, but in each cell we have different cells. I'll come back to this, or you can come back to this, and basically you can omit, do not share basically codes outputs, or even saving. This is some option. Now, if you go to the other setting, which is for the whole setup, notebook environment, not just this notebook, but all the notebooks on your Google Drive that you're going to work with. If you click on this gear next to the Google icon, you can change the theme. Obviously, if you've done programming, the dark theme is something that you'll see, and there are a lot. If you're more comfortable using dark theme for different purposes, you can just change it to a dark theme, and then you have this dark theme. I try to keep things in a light theme because it's easier to communicate. But I personally, when I do coding, I switch to dark theme a lot of times. It's just a habit. Keep it on light. And I think adaptive might be dependent on the time of the day. I really don't know. Double check. Some options, not very important there. One thing I want to talk about is the editor keywords. We're going to keep it on default, but if you've used VIM, you can just set it on Vim or VIM. Some of you might have used it as an editor. Then it's going to switch the keyboard shortcuts to VIM. Can set up the font size. Default is 14. You can make it bigger or smaller for the text and codes. Indentation, it's on 2 right now. Maybe I'm going to change it to 4. 4 is more common for programming for indentation. I'll talk about it, refer to this again, but in Python, indentation is super important. That's how Python realizes that you are done with a for loop or if condition. So indentation cannot be ignored, let's put it this way. In some programming languages like MATLAB, if I'm not wrong, you can just put an N and at the end of for loop and you're done. But indentation in Python is super important. You want to include line numbers. Some indentation guides basically tells you how far you are. It's kind of a draw a line. It's more like graphical helps. Enable code folding. I let you play around with these options. This is more for the IDE environment and which one you are more comfortable with when you're coding. Well, we don't have a pro option. You kind of have to pay for that. You see the advantages, like more memory you get, longer runtime, and faster GPUs. GitHub, I briefly mentioned GitHub, right? GitHub is somewhere people share their codes. You can make it private or public, so other people can actually take a look at your code and use it. You can connect, if you have a GitHub account, you can connect it to here, to this. And this, I can just mention it. I really don't know who added these options, but there's a kiddie mode that if you activate that, it's not happening for some reason. I don't know why it's not happening, but you're going to see some funny stuff going on your notebook. Oh, there you go. Now something is happening. I have no idea. Someone had a sense of humor, and I guess, or maybe there is other reason. You might see some cats coming to screen at some point. All right. Irrelevant. But so it's up to you. This is the environment you want to code in. So you can just change the setup you set the setup you want. I'm just going to disable this for future, prevent future distraction. Now, view table of content. I might talk about it later. One thing I want to talk about is this tab, right? These 3 lines there. If you click on it, it brings up table of content. Now you can create sections. Maybe before I do that, let me talk about cells. So in this environment, you have 2 types of cells. Like this is the kind of cell you can write codes in. I can just say print. This is a code cell, right? And if I run this now, before I do that, pay attention to this option here, connect, right? At the moment, it's not connected, meaning that this is a notebook is not active. It's not connected to server on Google. So if I click on connect, it's gonna take a few seconds and it's gonna initialize the notebook. Now you're connected. You know, you have some amount of RAM. You have about more than 12 gigabytes of RAM, and you have 40, at least on my computer, this is how much space you have on Google Drive. So I have about 40 to 43 gigabytes of disk space, right? And the RAM is 13 gigabytes. Now, you can get more RAM if you're running extensive, large pieces of code to go by buying Google Pro, Google Colab Pro. But for what we do in this course, it's more than enough most of the time. So this is, so now it's up and running. Now your notebook is connected to Python engine. This is a code cell, right? You can just write a code in it. We'll talk about coding, obviously. Print is the simplest command I can think of. And you can run the code by just clicking on this play button there, run cell, or you can just hold Control and press Enter. Both of them are going to run the code, and you'll see the output of the code right below it. Right? So this is a code cell. It's whatever you put in this string. Now, you can create new code cells, right? If I click on this, it's going to insert a code cell below this code. And you can also see the shortcut, Control M B. Right? If I click that, you're going to get a new code cell there. Each code cell, you see some options there. You can open the editor setting right from there. You can delete this code cell, Control M D. You can add comment there. You can move it up. I can move this down, but if I move it up, then the option to move it down is also there. So I can move these code cells around. I can rearrange my note. I'm going to delete this for now. The second option is cell. We can add a text cell. Now, if I click this, right, I get a text cell. This text cell is like pretty much the name says it. You can type. You have options to change the headline, the bold, italic. You can insert image there. You can use different listing if you want to list, provide a list. But this is a text cell. And look at the right side, right? When I type here, on the right side, it shows what would this look like once you press enter or shift enter, better to say, to run this. Or you could just click somewhere else in the notebook, right? So now you have a text. So by the end of the day, you can create a document that your codes are there, and I can even move this up, move it up and say, this is a text cell. So by the end of the day, you can create a document that has text, it has codes, and it has the output of the code, code lines. And you can download it at the end and take it wherever you want. So think about the way you code, right? You code, you get the result, and you want to explain the results. Well, you can just create a text cell and explain the results. Now, I can go and say, I can create a list of items. And I come here and say, well, I can actually now, this is more fancy. I can just click there and say, item 1 and put item 2, and you see on the right side, this is what you're going to get. If I press shift enter to run the cell, here is what I'm going to end up having in my text cell. Right. You can use bullet points, same story, right? Just in a different way of listing. So a lot of editing capabilities that you have in a text editor, you have it here. Shift enter. So this is a text cell, this is the code cell, this is the output of the code cell. Right? Now, you can go further, right? As I said, this is a document. You can think of it as a Microsoft Word document where you have your code and the output of your code and everything together. So if you click on the left side on this 3 lines there to bring up this sidebar here, you can create sections, right? I can click, let's say here, and create a section right there. And I call this section 1, lack of creativity, and shift enter. And go here and create another section. Call this section 2. Have to be consistent, right? 2. Now, if you have, you're going to end up having long notebooks with codes and text. Every time you're using a notebook, you can just, let's say, like section 1 and section 2, each one is multiple pages. And I want to go back to section 1, right? It's sort of kind of hyperlinks. You can click on section 1, it takes you to section 1. Click on section 2, it takes you to section 2, right? So you have a great document with capability of navigating around. You can write text, you can put codes, everything all in one place. Now, I don't know if you paid attention, but when I created these sections, right, you have this hashtag space section 1. That's the kind of way that you can create a section. I can go ahead and create a subsection in a different way. I can say create a text cell, because these are just text cells. And if I put 2 hashtag space and say subsection 1 shift enter. Right, now this is a subsection. Look at the table of contents on the left. Right? I have section 1, I have subsection 1. I can go ahead and create a subsection 1.1.1. Shift enter. Right. Now I have section 1, subsection 1, and a subsection, which I end up having a typo there. Right. So you can pretty much organize this notebook, different texts, put the explanations, write things, and then write your code with the results, and then go to a different section, change the topic, all this in one place. Now I can actually, so what you have here, right? This is the kind of a shortcut to create code and text cells. If you move your mouse cursor, you might have figured it out by now, between 2 cells, you get these options in this option too, right? You can just say, between this subsection and this code, I want to create a new code cell. Print subsection 1.1. Enter. I messed up because I used uppercase. All right. So, and you can do the same thing with subsections, and then create a long document. You can have it. Those options are also available here. You can insert code cell, text cell, section header cell. Now, what is code snippets? I'll talk about it a little bit later. But runtime is something that you will use. We'll come back to this. But sometimes you get a notebook and you want to run all the codes. So you say run all, or control F9, right? It runs all the codes, and you see these numbers. You say this is the order of running these codes. You say nothing here. I can delete this set. Sometimes what happens is that things get stuck, right? If you're familiar with that in programming, you can reset the runtime. Right? If you reset it, of course, you get a message that it's going to remove all the variables. And I say yes, and then it resets everything. And then you see that's initializing again and connecting to the kernel, as they call it. And then you can run everything from the top and get the output. You can clean output results, if I remember where that is. And I think edit, there you go. So you can clear all the outputs, right? Right now, your code, you run it and you get the output. You can just say, well, you know what, keep the notebook open, but clear all the outputs. So still run, but you just don't see the output. All right. You can just do search, find, replace different parameters or variables in your notebook. Code snippet is something that when you're programming, there's some pieces of codes that you might need when you're working with Google Colab, and I'll refer to them whenever we need them. You can actually find them. They're written as snippets, code snippets, and you can actually find them and bring them to your notebook, right? Let's say you want to hide a piece of code. If I click on it, and here is the instruction I get, right? This cell below will automatically load with code hidden. Right? So if you want to hide a piece of code, you want to share your code with someone, you want to share the results, but you want that person to see these specific lines of code you wrote. For some reason, it's either proprietary, can spell that, can pronounce that. It's owned by someone else, or you just don't want to share it because it's something that, private, maybe it's a username and password. You can just pretty much add this to that cell. Right? If I copy and paste, I just use Control C and Control V. Then you see the code is like not showing up, right? You can just give a name to that and just say hidden. When you load this notebook, this piece of code will be hidden. Well, that depends on what you want to do. Not something we're interested at the moment, but later on when we talk about maybe APIs and using username passwords, you can just use that to hide it. Something that's useful is connecting to Google Drive, mounting a Google Drive in your notebook. All right, the code is written there. It tells you so you can actually import. I'll talk about these libraries and everything, but we'll come back to this part. But you can connect your notebook to your Google Drive. It's not connected by default, and then refer to the files you have on your Google Drive and just bring them to your notebook, is whether it's a CSV file, Excel file. And all of these, you can actually see them as a source notebook. If I click on this, it opens up the snippet with explanation and what the code is doing and some example, right? Listing files, downloading files. Again, no worries. We'll talk about this whenever we need them, but just so you know it's there. We also have variables. Now, in old versions of Python, we actually didn't have this, and this is very nice to have. If I define a variable, let's say I say A is equal to 2, right, and run this cell. I do Shift Enter or run it. Now it tells me here is something you see in MATLAB, right? See the name of the variable is A, the type is integer, talk about it, and the value in that variable is 2. So this gives you some good, nice environment, variable environment. All right. That's good enough for now. The last thing I want to mention is that, as I said, this you can treat this as a Word document or Google Doc. What I mean by that? Let's say you're writing your code and you're working with someone, collaborating, right? You can share this. And the option share, maybe you saw already. If you click on that, you can actually put the person's email here. Oh, these are my some of my colleagues. Put the person's email here and press done, and then it's going to be shared with that person. That person who you share the document with, or you or someone who someone shared their codes or this notebook with, you can put comments, right? You can just say, hey, this needs, I don't know, improvements, right? And add the comment, that comment. Right? Now, if someone comes and the person comes, I'll say, oh, I see what you meant, or we can just add explanations there, and then you can say, oh, it's resolved now, right? Very similar to track change you have in Google Doc. All right. Let me see if there is anything else. You have once you connect it to Google Drive, actually you're even going to see it on the folder, Google Drive here, all the folders and files right here, and have access to them directly. For now, it's just a bunch of sample data, default sample data sets that they come with Google Drive, any notebook you create at Google. That's pretty much it. Some of the things you might use end up coming back to these. One thing, if you're smart and well, you're smarter than me and you're in rush or you do a lot of coding, keyboard shortcuts are very useful. Now, a lot of them I don't even remember, but you might find a lot of them useful. You can just add a comment, Control Alt M. You want to run old cell in notebook, Control F9, you saw that one. Run a specific piece of code, you select it, Control Shift Enter, right? Run the focus cell, Control Enter. So these are some shortcuts. Some of them don't have any. You can set those shortcuts. But if you do a lot of coding and you use this, you're going to end up using this environment. You might end up actually memorizing some of these because it's going to help you to navigate your code and creating codes faster. You can get rid of this and make it a little more neat if you don't want to see extra piece and you want to take advantage of the full screen. All right, that's that. Let me think if there is any question, guys, about this. All right, so hopefully you have this set up and running. Go ahead if you have a question. No question. No. Let me know if you have a question. Just make sure that you set this up and running and everything is set up. We're going to use this environment a lot. Right? That's basically going to be where we do coding. Now, this is for Google Colab, and this is a great tool for us to learn, right? Because we don't need to install anything on our computers. We don't need to install new libraries on a computer that we're using. You have access to it wherever you go. You can share it. You can put comments on it. So many great things that come with Google Colab notebooks. But if you want to use Python on your computer, a couple of IDEs out there, the environment that you can use for Python coding. Right? The most common one is Anaconda. Anaconda is something that probably is the most common environment for Python coding. Right? If you can, it's free. Right? You can just basically don't pay attention to pricing as an individual. If you're not using it for business purposes, you can just download the individual version and run it. And the great thing about Anaconda is that Anaconda is an environment that comes with a lot of libraries in Python that are already installed there. I don't know if I have Anaconda on this. I do have it as a shell. I do not have it. I will install it next time and I'll show you the general environments. But it comes with a couple of good environments. One of them is a notebook environment that you can use. It's a little large, so if you don't want to install and load everything in your computer, Miniconda would be something that you are probably more interested. Miniconda is a smaller version of Anaconda. It doesn't come with all the libraries. It's still free. You can install it, and then you can just install the libraries that you want as you develop your code. Something that you see people use is Spyder. For Spyder Python, you should have added that. It's an IDE, very common. If you use MATLAB a lot, Spyder is something that you are gonna find very familiar to you. And again, I don't think I have it installed on this. Should have done it. Just next class, I'll show you that this is a general sense of why it is. Free, you can install it. It has a lot in common with MATLAB environment. So you might find it useful. It has some area to write the code in the middle. You have a list of files or codes. You get the variable environment, and then you see the outputs. It also is kind of similar to R. If you've used RStudio, Spyder, it has a lot in common with RStudio if you do R program. So that's another environment that you can use. One that I use, and it's becoming more and more common these days, VS Code. VS Code, very light, very smooth. It's probably the most common these days IDEs for Python coding. It can run IPython notebook codes. You can create notebooks. You can create Python files. But in general, this is something that you see a lot of people use. Now, there are other IDEs that you can use. In general IDEs, Vim, that you can use for coding. But it really depends on Vim editor. Depends on your taste, honestly. I'll leave it to explore that. But if you want the least problematic, I would say the easiest way to install an IDE is Anaconda. The largest, Miniconda, is the next. It's not that large. It doesn't come with all the libraries, only the essential ones, and you can just add the libraries you'll want later on. Spyder is very common, not that common in production. It's mostly used for maybe research environment that you see that a lot. VS Code, Visual Studio Code, it's very light, common among software engineers, programmers, for production, for different purposes. It does not have a great notebook environment. You have to do a little bit of digging this VS Code. VS Code, you can write codes in it in every programming language. So the good thing about it is that you can install the environment. VS Code, I do have that one, so I can just open it. I have some codes here that probably are not something that are interested. We are interested. You can create as like this is a notebook environment, but if I go there and let's say I create let's go there. So you have to install. The way it works is that you have VS Code. You can it's a general platform. Then there are these modules that you can install, all for free. Most of them for free. Some of them you have to pay. Jupyter Notebook, notebook environment, Python, C++, C#, Java. All of them works in this environment. So if you do programming in different programming languages, even VS Code is a great place to is a great IDE that you can use. All right. But for the purpose of this course, we are going to use Google Colab, which is basically an environment developed by Google. Right? You run your code on the cloud. You don't need to be worried about libraries. You don't need to be worried about setting things up on your computer. You don't need to be in front of your computers. You can use any computer as long as you have access to your Google Drive. All right. Question on this one, guys. We will use this environment a lot. So at this point, you should have Google Drive, some folder that you hopefully just have there designated to this course, and some initial understanding of the environment we're going to run the codes in. All right. All right. Now what time is it? We have about 10 minutes. I will share the first notebook we're going to use. We'll open it. I'll just go over a little bit, and then we'll continue that in next class. Right? The folder right here, and I just drag and drop this to this folder. Right? Python basics. If I we do the same, hopefully it should go smoothly without any problem. If you double click on this, it's going to open up the notebook. We will work on this notebook in next class. We don't have that much time, but I want to start talking about this notebook and maybe just cover a little bit at the beginning part. Right? So I created this notebook, right? It's most of it is just what I explained, right? This is just a text cell. If I double click on this, it just tells me this is a title, just one, or it's just a section. And I used, this is kind of a little bit here and there, you'll learn these, but even if you don't know how to make something bold, this is just basically two asterisks, 2 stars on left, 2 stars on right, closing and opening the statement that you want it to be bold as a text, right? If I remove this, it's just not going to be bold anymore. But in the new version, you don't even need to know that. Just click, select this and click on bold, right? It's just going to add it. Back then when I did, I didn't have these options. So Shift Enter, right? So that's the section title all the way at the top. Then I have table of contents. I created this. This is a little bit of HTML. If you know HTML, you might get a sense of what is going on there. If you don't worry about it. This is more like for a purpose of learning and navigating the notebook. I created just hyperlinks. Aside from table of content on the left, these are also hyperlinks. So if you click on each section, it takes you exactly that section. Because this notebook is relatively long, so we need that. Right? And the same story, table of content. I can click on each one of these and just click on these and get to the section I want. Right? It's not connected. Let me add this. Here is not connected because I haven't run this notebook. Now you don't really have to click on connect. Once you run a code cell in this notebook, this is going to happen automatically. So if I go here and say, let's the first code cell, right? Pay attention to this top right. This is not connected yet, right? You don't see the memory or disk. If I click on this play, Slowly, it's connecting, initializing, and then it's connected and it runs the code. So that connecting is just a matter of, if you forgot to do it, don't worry, nothing is going to happen. Once you run the code, it's just going to do it by itself. All right, so just the introduction part. We'll come back to this. This is the notebook we're going to use for the next class, and we go over these in class assignments, so don't worry about finishing it. This is the material for next class. Few things I just want to mention before we end the class. Python is an interpreted language, right? So if you are really into programming, interpreter versus compiler, these two types of programming languages, a good number of you have used C, C++, C#, all those programming languages, and I think even Java is compiler type of programming language. What does that mean? It means it compiles the whole program and then it runs it. Kind of translates the language, the program, into low-level, machine-level language, like you can think of it as binary 0 and 1, and then it runs it. Whereas interpreted language, or interpreting languages, they run the codes line by line. Right? There's still a little bit of compiling happening there, but in general, compiling kind of languages are faster than interpreted languages. Python is an interpreted language. MATLAB is an interpreted language. It's an interpreted language because it runs line by line. Now, what is IPython? Now, IPython is short for Interactive Python. Okay? It started 2001, so it's Python itself is old. It's from 90s, I believe. Started in 2001, and it's kind of you can think of it as the interface, I would say. Like Python is the engine, right? And IPython is like kind of a control panel, as I say, interactive control panel. That's kind of make it easier to communicate or work with Python. Now, Jupyter Notebook, or which basically is very dominant nowadays as a notebook environment, IPython notebook, you can think of it that way, is a browser-based graphical interface for IPython shell. So start from Python, IPython is interactive Python, then we have Jupyter Notebook, which is a kind of notebook that you get when you install Anaconda, or when you have VS Code, or you have Miniconda, or any other programming language that gives you the capability to work with notebooks. Right? That is browser-based. So either depends on what's the default browser in your computer. You have Google Colab, Google Chrome, Firefox, whatever that is that Microsoft has for Windows nowadays. Edge, I think it's Edge. That opens up, and you can just kind of code in that. Now, that's Jupyter Notebook. Now, the online version of Jupyter Notebook, or Google version of Jupyter Notebook, is Google Colab. This is what we are using. So, basically, it allows you to run these notebooks, Jupyter Notebooks, on the cloud. Right? It comes with all the libraries you want. You don't have to install anything. You just have to import the library. Let me close this table of content and bring back those options at the top. So if you go to File, you can actually download, see, as I mentioned before, you have two options, IPython file or Python file. Download IPython file gives you a Jupyter Notebook file that you can use and open it in any Jupyter Notebook editor, as long as you have that capability.